think about Hispanic Heritage Month both as a moment of celebration and as a moment of kind of critical reflection and resistance.
Why do migrants come is economic opportunity.
The Hispanics need role models. We have heroes and heroines that they don't know about.
Park Street in Hartford, Connecticut, the hub of the capital city's Hispanic and Latino community. Restaurants, businesses, and community groups line the street as people keep alive a part of their native country.
This is where we kick off Hispanic Heritage Month. 4 weeks to honor and celebrate the contributions that Latinos have made in the United States. I'm Erica Arias.
And I'm Sarah Sanchez. In Connecticut, the Latino community makes up 17% of the population.
By far, the largest group hails from Puerto Rico, followed by Mexico, Dominican Republic, Ecuador, Colombia, and Guatemala.
And these are their stories.
Connecticut has a high concentration of Latinos compared to other places. But you have places like Park Street where you can walk and speak Spanish or a different language simultaneously without fearing the sort of racist backlash that you would see in other places.
It's unclear when the first modern-day Latinos, particularly Puerto Ricans, first arrived in Connecticut.
In the 19th century, Connecticut port towns saw trade and commerce, primarily rum, with the islands in the Caribbean.
Then in the early 1920s, 30s, you'll see the needleworking factories, mostly in Willimantic and Charter Oak and around here. And you'll see a lot of the chicken poultry industry bringing a lot of folks.
The movement of Puerto Ricans was made easier in 1917 when President Woodrow Wilson signed the Jones-Safroth Act, making Puerto Rico a U.S. territory and granting its residents statutory citizenship.
When you look at the immigrant experience in the United States, the standard answer to that question, why do migrants come, is economic opportunity. The Puerto Rican migration to the United States has been defined as a working class community, people looking for economic opportunity that they did not have in Puerto Rico.
However, it wasn't until the advent of World War II and the establishment of Operation Bootstrap in 1947, the Puerto Ricans began migrating in waves to the mainland.
Operation Bootstrap, which followed World War II, which was a program to industrialize the island. And unfortunately, the premise upon which it was based was that the industrialization wouldn't provide enough jobs unless tens of thousands of people would migrate a year. So Puerto Ricans started coming to the continental United States because they were kind of pushed out. In Connecticut, as in many other states, some of the first settlers in that post-World War II period were people who came to do things like pick tobacco in Hartford and cultivate or pick apples and peaches in other parts of the state and do other kinds of agricultural work.
From the fields, these new residents began moving into Connecticut cities like Bridgeport, Waterbury, and Hartford.
They opened up small businesses, places where Latinos could come together to socialize and organize.
From the very beginning, there was a very strong spirit of civic engagement and a desire to participate politically.
The building behind us honors 3 women, Elba Cruz, Maria Sanchez, and Edna Negron, 3 heroes in the Latino community in Connecticut.
Maria Sanchez is affectionately known as La Madrina, or the godmother of the Puerto Rican community here in Connecticut.
She and other madrinas challenged the status quo and fought for the rights of Puerto Ricans and other Latinos statewide, becoming the first Hispanic woman elected to the Connecticut General Assembly.
There were a lot of very important people in the Hispanic community that were women way ahead of their time. They were movers and shakers, and they paved the way for everybody else.
Another trailblazer was Olga Mili. She was Maria Sanchez's mentor. Born in Guayamo, Puerto Rico, Olga Mili was one of the first Puerto Ricans in Hartford. She arrived in 1941 with her American husband and a young daughter. She saw firsthand the discrimination others in the community were facing.
I remember when we were kids, my mother couldn't call for appointments because she had an accent. If they found out she was Puerto Rican, they wouldn't give her the rent. She hated that discrimination and she fought against it. She taught me all my life. She said, don't let any stereotype define you. You can do anything with enough hard work and determination.
Olga began working with the Legion of Mary at St. Peter's Church in Hartford because she noticed there were no social services for Puerto Ricans and other Latinos in the area.
My mother used to go to 99 Main Street, which is next to St. Peter's, and go door to door to all the migrants coming in and see what they needed. She didn't believe in giving a handout. She believed in giving a hand up. And so people could help themselves and get a better life. That was her mission in life, is to help others help themselves.
Olga Mili's work in the community eventually led her to co-founding the San Juan Center, which to this day continues to provide social and economic development services for low and moderate income residents in the capital city.
We have heroes and heroines that they don't know about. It should be part of the school curriculum. There should be a, Hispanic hero curriculum. And so the kids can look up to those people and try to emulate them.
In Waterbury, it was Doña Genoveva Rodriguez who, with 12 children in her care, decided she was going to help other Puerto Ricans who were arriving to the city who didn't know where to start.
They didn't speak English, she spoke English, and they didn't know where to access housing and work and social services. So even before there were social service agencies to help Puerto Ricans and other Latinos and other migrants and immigrants, people like Doña Genoveva, primarily women, were the ones who were instrumental in serving as voluntary social workers.
But I think here in particular, and in Hartford where we are right now, especially with the Puerto Rican community, that's as a community really helped make this city and make this state what it is really, really important to celebrate that, but more than celebrate, to kind of acknowledge, understand the history that we've just been talking about, right? That long history of empire, racism, and labor. And also seeing the kind of assets and strengths of those communities and building the cities and towns and areas that we're living in is really, really important.
Puerto Ricans and Latinos have made contributions on many, many levels. They've made political contributions, and they're both in electoral politics and in community organizations. They've made cultural contributions, as I mentioned, that have not always been recognized. They have added kind of a new, they've often revived cities. A lot of our cities were emptying out of white population in the years after World War II, and there's a continued white flight out of the cities. Puerto Ricans and other Latinos who come in are among the people who have revitalized our cities, revitalized our downtown, revitalized our commerce, revitalized our cultural activities. Some of the most active churches today are the Latino churches.
These early pioneers demanded change, fought for equality, changing the fabric of Connecticut.
Up next, we're flipping the camera on one of our own. Fox 61 News reporter Gabby Molina is sharing her family immigrant story for the very first time.
Despite the struggle that my parents went through, despite the sacrifice, my dad had to not be able to say goodbye to his own father when he passed away, because he couldn't go back.
Welcome back. As we continue to share stories from the Hispanic community here in Connecticut, we wanted to share the story of one of our very own.
For 3 years, Gabby Molina has been a reporter with Fox 61 News. And today she is sharing her story for the first time. Here's Raquel Harrington with more.
This is a photo from when I was still in Ecuador. The only birthday I celebrated there growing up was my first birthday.
Gabby was born in Machala, Ecuador in 1994. Just shy of her second birthday, she and her parents moved to Southington, Connecticut in search for greater opportunities.
I think kind of saw that it would have been a struggle not just for them if we had stayed there, but a struggle for like their children as well. And obviously only I existed at the time, but they knew that they wanted to raise the whole family and knew that they were not going to have certain opportunities there.
Gabby's father, Caesar, had come to Connecticut first, and about 2 years later, Gabby and her mother, Lena, followed. As she explains it, Gabby and her mother came on a plane and stayed for the next 10 years.
A lot of people think that it is just like crossing the border or making like a big trek, but sometimes it's just overstaying your welcome here. I knew, but I don't think that I understood. So I definitely didn't have like a typical childhood in the sense that I was always getting pulled out of school to go to the immigration lawyer. I didn't like process that that wasn't normal and didn't process what really was happening.
When the family first arrived, they lived in this building, which has long since become Nyron's of New England Florist.
It was the first apartment that we ever lived in when we came to the U.S. My parents and I shared one room. I was a baby, so we lived on the top floor. Now it's a florist, but we shared there. We lived with a Peruvian man named Isaac, who is still in our lives to this day.
They moved around a lot before settling down in a modest ranch-style home in Southington.
Southington is like very much a predominantly white town. I was one of like a handful of Hispanic children, or really anything other than white. I never felt different, I don't think. I felt like I fit in pretty well because I genuinely feel like very American. Obviously, I've grown up here my whole life. I'm from Ecuador and I'm super close to that part of me, and I'm, biologically 100% Ecuadorian. Like my whole family is from there. Both my parents are from there. I was born there, but I'm also really American because I grew up here.
When Gabby was 10, she and her parents became permanent residents. It was only then that the now family of 5 could make their first trip back to Ecuador.
The first time we got to go to Ecuador, our entire extended family met us at the airport. And people were grabbing me and crying and hugging me and kissing me that I had no idea who they were. So it was very overwhelming. To get to meet them for the first time at 10 years old was the craziest experience.
Gabby says she spoke a mixture of English and Spanish at home, partially because her parents only spoke their native tongue and slowly learned English as the years went by. And it was also because she was, for a while, her parents' official translator.
I definitely was one of those kids that was not shy because I had to talk at the doctor's office and talk on the phone and talk at the grocery store because my parents didn't know English as well as I did, because obviously it was a lot easier for me to learn how to speak English at 2-3 years old than it was for them as adults.
When asked about how she identifies, Gabby says she will say Ecuadorian first, American second.
I'm so grateful to my parents that they always, to this day, have very much kept our Ecuadorian side intact. They have always cooked Ecuadorian food. We've grown up getting candies and treats and stuff sent from Ecuador.
If I were to ask your parents if they're living the American dream, what do you think?
Absolutely, definitely. As someone who, they get to see on TV every day, that's a big deal to them. To get to show this is my daughter, she's on TV because we made this huge sacrifice 26 years ago, and it was worth it because look where she is now, look where we are now. We have a home, I have a job, my middle sister has a job, my youngest sister's in college. We've never, and this is where I get emotional, I have never felt like I missed out on anything, I didn't have something, despite the struggle that my parents went through, despite the sacrifice. My dad had to not be able to say goodbye to his own father when he passed away, because he couldn't go back.
Gabby and her family became U.S. citizens just shy of her 18th birthday. She says they're all extremely close, and it's actually why she decided to move back to Connecticut after college. Now you can catch Gabby's entire sit-down interview on FOX61.com and FOX61 Plus. For FOX61 News, I'm Raquel Harrington.
Coming up, from savory to sweet, stepping into various kitchens, we give you a taste of home when we come back.
Welcome back. All around the world, food is an essential part of a person's culture and identity.
A taste can conjure up a memory, a feeling, a sense of home. Our DeAndrea Turner has a story that will light up your taste buds.
As the late Anthony Bourdain used to say, food is everything we are. And for those who left their home country, it is the strongest connection to the place and the people that they left behind.
Just, a little simple food like an arepa really kind of kept us in touch with our traditions and our family values and all that.
Alejandro Cordero and his brother Andres are co-owners of Somos Arepas in New Haven. They opened the restaurant just before the COVID-19 pandemic hit because they felt the community was in need of some of the food they grew up eating.
This is a family business. My brother and I opened it. All this food it connects me to my family and my family heritage. So for me, when people walk in the doors, the first thing I always kind of tell my staff is just be very friendly and welcoming. Not only coming for good food, but I want this to be like you're sitting at your family table. I want people to know us and get to know us personally and enjoy our food, but also kind of get a sense of kind of who we are and kind of what this food represents to us.
And just 4 blocks away sits Sol de Cuba Cafe, a Cuban food institution in the Elm City that seeks to give visitors more than just really great food.
There's an education that's happening here that whispers to you, besides that which you're taking on through the aromas and the music and the lively atmosphere and the delicious taste of cocktails and foods. It has become a reality that all of your senses are heightened when you come into this experience, and the aromas are just, penetrating into my consciousness and somehow mapping out a future for me that I was so unaware of at that time. We had picadillo once a week. Once a week we had a bistec, a palomilla, or filete. We always had fricassé de pollo, and a few times a month, some type of seafood that my father would cook, usually a pargo, so a red snapper. And so all of these dishes are just the same that I grew up with, and mostly my favorites.
We have yellow rice, the green pillo peas, arroz con gandules, pork, pernil, pork shoulder, chicken ribs, pork, fried pork. We do banana boat, that's canoa. We do the mofongo, they're great mofongos too. We do mofongos with shrimp, with chicken, with fried pork. Our mofongo is so sweet, so tender. It's so juicy, the plantains. We match the chicharrón from the pernil with garlic, and it's so much flavor. People need to try it.
Tenemos mucha variedad de comida, que es lo lindo que uno desea que la gente salvadoreña que viva acá siga la tradición, no siga la costumbre, siga la tradición de tener la familia junta, de festejar, de compartir y seguir siendo salvadoreño aunque estemos en una tierra ajena.
Delicious.
The many people we spoke to about their culture said that food was one of the most important ways to connect with that part of their identity.
Son nuestras raíces. Somos personas humildes, pero no nos avergonzamos de eso. Llevar en alto nuestra bandera, nuestro país, nuestras comidas. Para mí es, a mí casi no me gusta usar la palabra orgullo, pero es un orgullo realmente estar aquí con nuestro negocio. La gente lo disfruta mucho, entonces yo dije, vamos a hacer nuestro restaurante, pero con algo de nosotros. Que aquí el pueblo americano pueda conocer nuestra comida, nuestra cultura.
We're just serving food. We're serving tradition. We're serving a lot of flavor over here. Perú tiene la combinación de everywhere. We can find a little bit of each country in Peru.
I think it's our turn as Latin people and Latin culture and Latin food to put in the forefront. Like France had their time, Italy had their time. I mean, still great cuisine, right? But I think Latin food right now is at its peak, and it's only going to continue to get better and evolve.
Chef Xavier Santiago says that he had the chef's dream of growing up in a farm and living with his grandmother in Puerto Rico.
She had like anywhere from like plantains, she had chickens, different kind of bananas, different kind of root vegetables, but she could make something out of anything.
Join us later this month as we take you on a Hispanic food tour of Connecticut and stop at some of our favorite restaurants.
We here at Fox 61 News are dedicated to highlighting the contributions of the Hispanic community here in Connecticut.
We'll bring you content over the next 4 weeks and beyond on Fox 61 News, Fox 61 Plus, and our Fox 61 News app. I'm Erica Arias. Thanks so much for joining us.
And I'm Sarah Sanchez, and thanks for watching Aqui Estamos. Fox 61 News celebrates Hispanic Heritage Month.
Everywhere I go, I want people to know, like, we have this rich culture here. We have amazing food, we have amazing people, we have amazing stories.
It's like if I am going to tell a story, that's the only story I have. And I realize then that when we get more creative, more knowledgeable, when we start traveling and when we start knowing people from other countries.
We contribute our culture, not just a language, but also a variety of traditions to our larger community that is pretty notable.